Ladies and gentlemen, the stock market just shot to the moon and all our problems are over. Or is it over? Well, let's analyze today what are the reasons for the stock market that went up and see whether they're sustainable. And more importantly, there are two important guests coming to our 1865 channel, and they are all providing you an analysis of whether this trade war, how will it how will it progress, whether it will sustain in its current trajectory, or you would just crash the economy in a big way. So let's just watch on, shall we? So, ladies and gentlemen, the US stock market has just gone to the moon. And there are a couple of good news that have just came out, and the whole stock market is all celebrating. Are these sustainable? Today we'll attempt to analyze this, and so watch till the end as I give you my analysis of what to do next. As a precursor, we actually have a expert interview that is already short. So we have got Christopher Tan and his head of investment that's come, and more importantly, they give you an analysis of the impact of the trade war and how do we navigate through this crisis. So please remember, hit subscribe so that you not miss this analysis. Chris Tan is the founder and CEO of Provident, and he has come to our channel many times. Don't miss his expert view. And if you miss this one, you might just miss a great opportunity. Today, I'll attempt to cover some latest good news that just broke out from the White House and the stock market response. And let's analyze this good news and let's answer specifically the question: how difficult and how long will trade negotiation will take? So remember, all these are very important things unfolding. Remember, hit subscribe. And these are the usual disclaimers. These are not financial advice. Let's go. So a few days ago, Donald Trump attacked Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, and threatened, in that sense, to get him out. Right? He actually said this. He said, if I want him out of there, he will be out real fast. And he has put a lot of pressure on the Federal Reserve Chairman to cut interest rate in a hope that it will boost economic growth. And as a result, the stock market and the US dollar plunged badly. But in a dramatic U-turn just a few hours ago, Donald Trump has outrightly said that, no, I have no intention of firing a Federal Reserve Chairman. Okay. So he has no intention of firing US Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell before his term of leading the US Central Bank ends next year. None whatsoever. Okay. Never did. I never did. You're a stupid dumb. You have interpreted what I said wrongly. Well, this is a dramatic shift from Trump, who have recently ramped up his rhetoric against power and declined to rule out the possibility of taking the unprecedented step of firing the Federal Reserve Chairman. So this is the usual Donald Trump flip-flop. I think we are all used to it already. More importantly, right now, the stock market futures is still rising. So, good days are all ahead, or is it, right? So another good news that just came out is that Commerce Secretary Bessen has actually made a statement. He expected the US-China tariff fight, to de-escalate in the very near future. So things will become less fiery. And he made a lot of good news, right? He says that there will be a de-escalation, okay, in Donald Trump's trade war with China in the very near future. Now, his words carry a bit more credibility, okay? So Bessen said that the sky-high tariff fight between Washington and Beijing are unsustainable. So he spoke that in a private investor event. Here I want to highlight something very important. He says that no one thinks that the current status quo is sustainable. And, he basically thinks that, this thing will de-escalate. He believes that the prospect of de-escalation between the economic superpower should give the world, the market, a sign of relief. And he's made this very statement. We have an embargo now on both sides, right? Embargo. You know what embargo basically means, an artificial stopping of trade between the two countries. At the level of tariff right now is as good as both countries have an embargo. And I think this is very important for us to take note. So he also see that this current state is really very bad. Trade embargoes are very bad. Usually happen as a prelude or as a precursor to something very, very serious, like a war or something like that. So Trade Secretary actually said that despite US increasing a tariff up to 145% and China retaliating 125%, the goal of Trump's policy is not to decouple with China. And right now, negotiating with China is likely to be a slog, means, a lot of hard work and things like that. But both sides don't think that the current status quo is sustainable. So there is, in some sense, incentive for both to come together. So as a result, the stock market initially, when Trump said that he's going to, hinted that he's going to fire Jerome Powell, it went down by, 2% over. And in a dramatic U-turn, he changed stance again. It went up by 2% over, right? So, these are these are just now it's called 家常便饭. Basically, we see this every day, like we take our lunch and dinner. And the Nasdaq has the same response, went down dramatically, went up dramatically. And I think now we're quite used to it already. Now, to see whether trade negotiations are easy and likely to conclude quickly, let's see what's the current situation with existing trade negotiations that is happening. So Trump has a test case for trade negotiation with Japan. The failure to reach a deal now has analysts wondering if any will be signed. So U.S. tariff negotiator rules out quick deal despite push by Trump. So Akazawa, Japan top tariff negotiator, traveled to U.S. earlier this week to hold the first Japan-U.S. negotiation on Trump's tariff. And uh, he basically also said that, wow, Donald Trump actually attended the meeting. It was a sign that U.S. wanted to speed up negotiation. But he emphasized that despite the president's hope, any negotiation would likely take some time. Okay, we are not going to make a quick deal. It is difficult to say how long it will take to bridge the gap between the two sides. So no, he is very unoptimistic that things will get through. Now, I've negotiated with high-level Japanese before when in my corporate life, and I can tell you, negotiating with the Japanese are very, very difficult, right? There's so many hierarchies on their line. Everybody, talk a lot and don't make any decision. It's very unlikely this thing will be anything positive. So White House is very optimistic, right? White House is close on Japan-India tariff agreement, but I expect them to be light on specific, right? So one person close to the White House was quite negative about it. He said it may take months to hammer out the final details. So the Prime Minister of Japan said, we do not intend to make one compromise after another to conclude the negotiations swiftly. Either we have a good deal or no deal. There's no such thing as a fast and bad deal for us. So one of the person close to the matter, he said it will take months to hammer all these details. Okay, and he actually said I wouldn't even call them deals. It's basically an agreement that we would like to talk about doing a deal. So they're just talking about doing a deal, not talking specifically to firm up a deal yet. So I think there's a lot of hot air inside, a lot of over optimism, and the people in Wall Street, I think, are, in my opinion, overly optimistic. Now, this is where I want to say that we have the privilege in 1965 community. I've interviewed Minister Ong Ye Kung. The video is coming out soon once I clear the final touch-ups. Now, Minister Ong Ye Kung come to our channel not in the position of the Minister of Health. He'll make some comments on it, but I tap and squeeze him a lot to give his analysis on trade wars, implications, economy, how serious it is. Do we need to make drawer plans? Do we need to prepare for recessions? And he has a specific experience as the deputy chief negotiator for U.S. Singapore Free Trade Agreement that was signed in 2003. So he has been involved in trade agreements before. So he was a chief negotiator once, and it is important for us to tap that experience. He will give you a realistic view of how things are, and I think we should all watch that video. Remember, the video is going to be very long, but watch every minute of it. You will get a full juice from this interview. So hit subscribe so that when a video is launched, you will not miss his analysis. So what's the key takeaway? I would like to ask everybody instead now, is the market too optimistic now? Are the problems all over? The stock market is rocketing up as if, the end of all these problems are near. No, so I think trade negotiation take a long time. Specifically, how long, how difficult it is. Let's hear from the experts. We have got Christopher Tan, we've got Minister Ong Ye Kung and his team here. And I would say that, frankly speaking, at this juncture, there are no sign of any breakthrough yet. No sign, right? No sign. And the worst part is the longer the negotiation drags, the bigger the economic impact is to the global economy. And I'll get Chris Tan and Mr. Ong Ye Kung to give you the assessment. And just remember, hit subscribe. So with this, we will watch the space carefully. I would urge everybody to be more conservative at this juncture, not to be heroes and Rambos to deep dive in the market. But this is what I think the situation is. Well, let's watch and see. A lot of things are lining up, and I'll see you maybe tonight for a live stream. Okay, bye bye.